And welcome all to another excellent edition of the Tom O'Brien Show. I'm sitting in for the one and the only Tom O'Brien. This is Dave White. Normally my show is at 2 o'clock, but on Fridays we meet with Tom and talk about all things technology. Certainly we're going to do that today. We got a lot of stuff to talk about, but we'd enjoy your phone calls too. If they're more of a broad nature on technology, anything that you'd like to talk about, you can certainly call in at 877-927-6648. First of all, we want to get a little market wrap in today because so much has happened. And of course, nothing more important than to talk about where the markets moved and started out here today. And, well, we had a nice little bounce. Of course, everybody is talking about Greece being solved. My guess is that we'll be talking about a whole bunch of problems with China on Monday, and then earnings on Tuesday. And the problems will continue on. They'll just be the same thing, just new players every year. But one of the problems today, we did close up 25 points in the S&P cash, up 210 points in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and up 75 points in the NASDAQ at 49.9770, but did not close above 5,000, although we did sneak above it earlier in the day. The real problem is that we had about 4.2 and 4.3 billion shares over the last couple of days as we moved up and down, mostly down. The problem, though, is now we bounced up fairly strongly, 25 points again. But guess what? About 3 billion shares. So we were about 25% lighter on the way up. That doesn't mean that that we can't go higher. But my guess is that we are trapped kind of in this trading range through next week until we get into earnings. Don't think that there's anything short of a bake sale from the Fed that is going to change this in the near future. There's going to, even if people were bullish, they're going to take a wait and see attitude about this market. But to me, it looks like, I bet I'm going to look at options tonight. But my guess is that we're kind of baked in probably 2080 in the highs and 2050s as the lows for the next few days until we get a good read on earnings, which of course starts very earnestly Tuesday evening. Other notable indexes out here, things that we need to look at, were oil. Oil was off about a nickel today at 52.73 on West Texas. Brent was up a penny, so very, very flat. Same thing with natural gas. It was up a nickel, but that's just kind of the noise that's in natural gas every day. Of course, the big news in oil today was the rig count from Baker Hughes. The rig count went up for the second week in a row. That I think we're, 12 rigs now higher. It's been going down for 6 months straight. We are at least getting a little bounce out, along with, of course, crude coming down fairly quickly. There were a lot of players that had bought oil, put it in tankers, and were steaming it around in circles, waiting for crude to come up. That it did get hammered down this week, pretty much put an end to those trades. Those tankers are headed, with all due haste, to offload the oil they sold this week. So probably not additional pressure, at least in the futures, but certainly additional supply is going to be on the market. It's very hard to see how oil will go any higher probably without a geopolitical event in the next week. I thought that maybe 53 to 55 was about where this market was going last week. It looks like it broke through that with volume, and you want at least 51 on West Texas to be tested with significantly lighter volume. A lot of people are calling for the 40s yet again for crude. I don't know if I can see that or not. I don't think that there's enough visibility in what's happening in geopolitical issues, but it's very tough for me to see that this thing goes much over 55 without a major event. So we're looking at it. A lot of the stocks in that particular sector should have bounced extensively today, and they did bounce a little bit again. the very, very light volume for 25-point move in the S&P cash going up into a weekend where a lot of stuff can happen is interesting, but it does not break the trend as far as I'm concerned. The character of the markets after a 3-day weekend tend to hold until we get to the next 3-day weekend, and that takes us into September. I suspect that it will be 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, kind of a cha-cha down into September. At least that's what I'm planning on and trading on in my both daily newsletter and the weekly newsletter that's geared toward technology and why we have this Tech Insider Hour. Natural gas, again, just kind of in the noise frame. And again, I've had a lot of emails this week. In fact, if you want to email me, you can at path@tfnn.com. And I'll try to answer your questions if we can get to it here today. But I've been getting a lot of questions about natural gas this week. And I'll say what I say every summer, and that is wait for the heat. Wait for the pain. Let them start using some natural gas out there in the Midwest to generate a lot more electricity when it gets very hot. Right now, there's 2 things that we're waiting on, and that is the contracts for electrical suppliers and wintertime production to come on. We'll know a lot more. Those contracts are normally signed in the next 2 to 2.5 weeks. Once the floor's in, then the heat will give us a little bit of bounce normally in the doldrums of August. And then, of course, you go into a lot of supply being taken up as it's moved for electrical production for the winter. And as soon as it gets really cold, you might see some nice bounces out of natural gas. But I'm thinking that you're probably looking at about the 15th to really get anything moving on it. The metals, big yawner today, 1161 on gold, up $2.50. Silver up 18 cents at $15.54. Copper, the one that you probably should be looking at the most these days, off 0.5%. So still no love for copper out here. And of course, I suspect we're going to see moves in copper if we do see manufacturing really start to pick up, especially in China. But right now, all we're seeing is the markets in China move higher. And I suspect when we get back from the break, we'll be talking about Europe and we'll be talking about China and finish the market he said wrap up, and then move into the technology for the rest of the show. Anyway, we'll be back in a minute. Give me a call, 877-927-6648. Email me at path@tfnn.com or post a message in the den.